Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Brianna Ojard, and I want to thank you for joining us for today's workshop, where we're going to take a look at navigating reports in the Infor CRM Web client. Your presenter today is Dale Richter, and I just wanted to mention a couple things before we get going here. The first is that you have noticed your line is placed on mute. However, we do encourage you to post any questions you may have to the question pane. And at the conclusion of today's workshop, we will try and get to any questions that come up. If for some reason we're unable to, we will definitely follow up with you via email. But that's all I have, so I'm going to turn it over to Dale so we can get started. Dale?
Thank you, Brianna. Good afternoon, everyone. Today we're going to be talking about navigating through your reports here. I've opened up my web client and I am using version 8.3.9 here in the web client. Down the left-hand side of the screen, I have the reports navigation icon to enter my reports. When I get into reports here, as with every other entity, I have my filters over on the right-hand side so I can filter down to accounts, activities, contacts, whatever family of reports I have here. New families of reports can be created. So if you want to create a family just for your company and put certain reports in there so they're easier to find, that can certainly be done. All of these reports that exist currently or out of the box from Infor CRM are all just sample reports. Of course, they're obviously not going to have any of your custom fields on any of those reports. So if you wanted anything customized, you'd have to do that customization yourself or through your business partner to get custom fields on the reports. So these are all just samples. You'd have to check them out, first of all, to make sure that they're pulling the information you want. Most of them do actually have sample connected to the name of them there. Now, once I go to a report, so if I limit my reports here to just my contact reports in the families over on the right-hand side, I can then highlight a specific report like the contact detail. And then over on the right-hand side of the screen, I have either run report or schedule report. Right now, I'll just click on run report. When I do that, it's going to bring up a screen and ask me if I want to match all records or not. So if I'm going to run that for all the records in the database, then I would just go ahead and click on next. Now, if I just wanted to run it for some reports, I can then go to specific conditions. And in the specific conditions, then I can choose whether I wanted to match all or any of the conditions that I'm about to set up. If I say any of the conditions, that's the same as or. So it would look at one condition or the next condition or the next condition. If you say all, it means that all conditions have to apply. So first condition and the second condition and the third condition all have to apply in order for that record to show up on your report. So if I just say all of them here, then I can click the plus sign to actually choose fields to make conditions for my report. So this one's contact detail. If I wanted to do contact detail that were created only in the last month here, so then I could say the date range, specific dates are from, let's go May 1st to June 1st, and click on OK. So now when I do that, the specific conditions for that date range, how do we know what date they're using? And I get this very often, that they choose a date range like this from May 1st to June 1st, but what date is it actually using? In order for you to know that, you would have to go back into the actual report. So I flip back over here into my server and looking at my managed crystal reports. If I double click on that contact detail, it shows me a property box here, and the actual date field it's using is the modify date. So if I'm looking for the create date, that's not what it's actually pulling. It's pulling from the modify date. So The standard user would not have access to this. This would have to be, you'd have to get this from the administrator or whatever. But another way to get around that is, if I go back here, let me go back to my client, and I'm going to say specific conditions, all. I'm going to remove that condition. I'm going to say next. Oops, I'm sorry, go back here. I want to do a query there. So let's go contact detail again, run report. And here I'm going to say specific conditions. And in the specific conditions, that one doesn't have groups set up here. Let me try a different one here. Let me go to, let's try the account detail. So here, when I choose my account, so instead of when I add my conditions, instead of choosing just date range there, which is using that date from the report properties, I'm going to say query. So if I choose query here, now I can choose my specific field from the account table. And here I could go down and choose my create date field. So now I know what field it's actually using. And I can say the create date is after, and then I can choose my May 1st here and say okay. And then I'd have to do that condition again. So I would say query again, create date again, and I'll say it's before, and I would say June 1st. So now we've got from May 1st to June 1st, using the actual field, the create date, so I know it's the correct date. So again, when I do that, with the plus sign here, so I could choose date range, which is going to use the date range from the properties, or I can choose a query. Now, again, if I were to go user here, I need to know what user they're actually going to use. Well, back in that properties window for the contact report, let's look at the account report. For the account report, they're actually using the account manager. That may be the field you want, and that would be fine. So, but only because I am able to get to the background properties box here, do I know that it is actually the account manager. So then I could say the user is either the current user or pick a user. And then it would pick only the accounts where that user or the current user is the account manager for those records. Whereas if I wanted to be certain, if I didn't have access in the background, again, I could go query and say the account manager ID is, however, here I would have to actually have the account manager ID number in order to do that using the query. So we'd have to know that number or get that number from like an account group or something. Now, another thing you can do when you're running a report is just choose a group. So here, if I choose group here, then I can go out and it's going to show me all my available groups that I can choose from, all my account groups. So probably, I think, is the most efficient way is actually go build your group first of all, put all your conditions that you want in it, make sure that group is correct, then you can just run the report off the group itself. You choose the group, click on OK. I would get rid of these other two criteria. Now it's just going to run the group for my prospects. Then when I click on next there, I do have some other questions for the report. Do you want to start each account on a new page? Do you want to include activities? Should I include opportunities? And there's several more questions here. Do you want to include historical details, activity notes, historical notes? If I just leave those all marked as yes, click on next, then I can choose how I want that to output, whether I want to output that in a PDF or a Word document, Excel, or a CSV or XML document. Normally, I would just output it to a PDF file. When you click Run As, that's just going to show who ran the report. You can click on somebody if you want. You can also leave that blank. It'll just run it as the user you are logged in as. In this case, I'm logged in as the administrator. Then if I just click on Finish, it's going to go ahead and run that report. So I'll sit here and wait for a minute, and that was pretty quick. When it did that, it goes, you see here, 0 to 100%. Now, if it goes 0 to 30% or something and stops and hangs up, probably one of the most common issues for reports is the job server service needs to be restarted. So again, back on your server here, if I go into my control panel, administrative tools, and then services, if I look down through my services under Sales Logics, I got a Sales Logics job service. And I can right click on that and just restart it. Restarting it would probably kick in your reports if it wasn't some other issue that you had with them. But that, I see that as a common issue that people have. When it does run, it'll give you this hyperlink here to access your report. So once it's ran, I can go ahead and click on that hyperlink. It opens up a box on the bottom of the screen here. You can see I can open that. And this is showing me my reports, and in this case, it's my prospector group, or my prospects group. It's just got a couple different records in it. There are 2 different records in it. Shows them on the left-hand side. So at that point, of course, I could print it, do whatever I want to it, email it, whatever. If I close that, I can always get back to that specific report just by going to my history within reports here. It's showing me the reports that I've ran. So I can go back in here and access that report again. Now it's that report that was ran at that specific time at 1:51. If anything has changed in the database since that, it will not reflect those changes. So that's the PDF that's sitting there since when I actually ran that report. Of course, if I ever want to clear out any of this history, I can just delete history over on the right-hand side of my screen here. Now, I also mentioned that we can schedule reports. So I have like an address report here, and over on the right-hand side, I can choose Schedule Report. Under Schedule Report, then, I can go in here and set up specific conditions again, choose a group if I want, or I can just choose to run all records here. If I choose to run all records, then again, I choose how I want my output, who I want it ran as, and how often do I want this to run. Maybe I want this to run every week on Monday at 2 a.m. in the morning. So nobody's in the office, it'll run and get that report done. And then you can say run it from and to date ranges. So I want that to run for the next month. I can go from June 1st to July 1st. And click on Finish. And that report has been successfully scheduled. Now, under my scheduled tabs, then, you'll see that that Crystal Reports has been scheduled to run. And of course, over here, I can edit that schedule here and change it, or I can actually delete that schedule also just with my delete icon there, or my delete hyperlink. So some of those reports that you do have to run on a weekly basis, you certainly run them out for a couple months and then just have them schedule themselves and run all by themselves. And then you could just come in here into the history in the morning, and they would be sitting here as hyperlinks that you'd have those reports. Now, again, if you're going to do any adjustments to those reports, that has to be done from the server in the Architect program, and you access those via Manage Reports. And then even though you have Manage Reports here, you also have to have Crystal Reports installed on the server, installed on whatever machine you're going to be doing those customizations on. And then if you had them installed, you could access your Crystal Reports here. Now, I don't have Crystal Reports on here, but I would access it through that icon there. When I do, it asks me to check it out first. I can then check it out, and then it would actually launch Crystal Reports and open that report for me. So at that point, I could look at how that report's filtering, what fields are pulling into that report, and whatnot. So again, that is through Manage Reports in your Architect where you'd access that. Make sure that you have Crystal Reports installed on that computer, and make sure you have the right version installed on that computer. Once you're done with the report, you can check it back in here again. I just choose check in. You also want to make sure you release that report to whoever it needs to be released to. Any of the other reports in here, you could also come in here and delete these if you've decided there's certain reports you're not going to use. You could either delete them or you could just on-release them. So for like this support report here, if I go into releases, I could just go in and remove the release here and click on OK. It would still be there if I ever needed to access it again, but it's not going to show up for any of the users. So, and again, that's all done on the server side. Running the reports here are done from the client. When you access your reports icon down the navigation bar, you can choose under the reports tab here to either run or schedule the report. You have all your different families you can choose from here to narrow down those reports to specific ones. Remember that these are sample reports, and that I would highly recommend, if you want a report, to go through some of these, print them out, see if they look somewhat like what you want to do, and then just adjust the report that's there. It's a lot easier to adjust one than create a brand new one from scratch. If you got any other questions on reports, certainly let us know. We'll try to answer those for you. If you have any suggestions for other webinars, we'd also like to hear them. I want to thank you all for joining me today, and have a great day.